The email arrived just past midnight, buried between a food delivery confirmation and a subscription renewal. There it sat, blunt and bloodless. Your position has been evaluated as redundant. Effective immediately. No call, no meeting, just a digital guillotine. Beneath it, like a footnote to humiliation, came the real-cut notifications one after the other. Unfriended, unfollowed, group chat exited. And then the final message, cold as chrome. We don't need dead weight. That one stung not because it was unexpected, but because it confirmed everything the protagonist had quietly suspected. Loyalty had vanished, not in a dramatic blaze, but in an echoless click. There were no outbursts, no slammed doors, not even a sigh. The protagonist simply sat still, as if silence could slow the world long enough to recalibrate it. The betrayal didn't hollow them out, it clarified everything. In the days that followed, they didn't speak much, but they watched, observed. Every smug post, every curated success story from people who once cheered too loudly, who laughed just a bit too long at others' missteps. Each digital trace was noted, filed. They were meticulous, like someone preparing for winter, only the storm would come from within. The flashbacks came in fragments, sharp and unavoidable. Birthday celebrations where compliments were laced with backhanded admiration. You're so lucky things work out for you. Smiles that didn't quite reach the eyes. Collaborative meetings where their ideas were repeated louder by someone else and the room applauded, a pattern they hadn't wanted to see, now glaring in retrospect. Friendship, it seemed, had only existed in the space between usefulness and envy, but now those fractured smiles had cracked completely, revealing ambition that never intended to share the spotlight. No longer tethered to false loyalties, the protagonist began sketching quietly in the dark mental blueprints laid across late nights. Each idea, once dismissed as naive or too ambitious, now became the scaffolding of their escape. They reconnected with old mentors, made cold calls with a warm tone, asked hard questions without flinching. They didn't announce plans, they executed them. Piece by piece, foundation by foundation, a new version of themselves began to form, not a comeback fueled by rage but by precision. Meanwhile, the former friend group basked in their moment. The shallow success of performative applause and algorithm-driven validation. Their leader, once the protagonist's closest friend, gave talks, posed for staged panels, and laughed just a bit louder for the cameras. They believed the silence behind them meant peace, that the one they cast aside had simply disappeared. But silence doesn't always mean surrender, it can also mean strategy. And shadows don't vanish, they just wait. Every insult, every message left unanswered, every smile that came with a knife underneath, it was all still there, like ammunition, hidden in plain sight. The protagonist didn't just remember, they used it. Names of collaborators who ghosted, now referenced in funding pitches. We've seen how not to do things. Old chats filled with subtle sabotage, now artifacts to show investors how they overcame adversity. Every passive-aggressive comment became a sharpened tool, and with each weapon forged from past wounds, they smiled not out of cruelty, but clarity. The morning their project launched, the protagonist didn't post a thing, but their phone lit up anyway. First, a ping, then 5, then a dozen. Former friends tagging one another, confusion veiled in compliments. Wait, is this the same person? The same name they once snickered at was now trending. DMs started flooding in. The protagonist didn't open them, but they read every subject line. Each buzz carried echoes of fear masked as curiosity. And the silence on their end? It was deafening. They didn't need a victory lap. Just one line in a niche magazine, a disruptive force from an unexpected founder. No confrontation, no revenge speech, no scene, just a screenshot left on read in the same group chat that once voted to exclude them. The caption read, "I built what you said I never could, that was enough." The loudest sound is the absence of explanation. There was no need to destroy anyone. Their downfall came not from sabotage, but exposure. The contrast was enough. One path built on noise, the other on quiet resolve. The former friend group spiraled, questioned, pointed fingers, tried to rebrand. But the damage was internal trust. Eroded, reputations quietly fraying. Meanwhile, the protagonist moved forward, untouchable. When asked how they did it, they always smiled and said, "I just focused, let others write the drama." They'd already lived the plot twist, and so they stood at the edge of a life remade, not louder but lighter. The weight of false friends gone, the silence now peaceful, not heavy. They didn't celebrate, they didn't forgive, they just kept building. Because the sweetest revenge isn't rage, it's relevance. They used to clap the loudest. At every pitch she nailed, every milestone she reached, her friends were the first to post, to cheer, to lift her high. She believed them, believed that shared ambition meant shared loyalty, that their smiles, their tagged photos, their late-night strategy calls meant something. She had the skills, she had the drive, but what she didn't realize, what she couldn't was, that loyalty had a shelf life, and the moment hers stopped being useful to them, silence became their final word. When the layoffs came, she was the last to know. HR didn't even blink, just handed her the envelope, eyes already moving to the next name on the list. She waited for a call, a message, even a simple "Are you okay?" But nothing came. No one reached out. Not the friend who's our sum she rebuilt. Not the colleague she rehearsed interviews with. Not even the one who once cried on her shoulder before their first big presentation. They vanished, quietly, cleanly, as if she'd never been part of their story at all. At first, she tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. People get busy, people get scared, but then came the message, a screenshot, forwarded by someone who didn't know it wasn't meant for her. A private group chat she'd once helped create. And there it was, bold and bare. She talked more than she delivered, followed by a few laughing emojis. That was all. No defense. No one pushed back. Just a quiet agreement, like her erasure had been long overdue. And in that instant, the pieces clicked. The shallow praise, the subtle disinterest when it wasn't about them. It hadn't started with the layoff, it had started long before, but she didn't confront them. No rage posts, no indirects. She simply went still, like a lake before a storm. They mistook her silence for defeat, but she was listening, watching, tracking every venture they launched, noticing which ones copied ideas she once casually brainstormed, seeing how they clung to public validation like it could erase what they'd done. She started collecting their habits, their product gaps, their lazy branding, their reliance on being first rather than being good. They were growing confident, and in their arrogance, they forgot to look over their shoulders. Then came the offer, an unexpected encounter with someone from her past, someone she'd once helped when no one else had time. They'd watched her fall from afar, quietly impressed she hadn't begged or lashed out. Over coffee, they made her a simple proposal. "I'm building something. You can lead it, but there's a cost. You can't just show up half-formed. You vanish. You let them think you've disappeared for good, or this thing never works." She didn't flinch. That night, she deleted her socials, burned the old files, packed the pieces of her past into cold storage and turned the key, while her enemies scrolled in peace, casually winning awards and speaking on panels. She was already rebuilding. From scratch. No echoes, no applause, just silence and the sharp sound of strategy. They thought they'd buried her, but she was already laying the foundation beneath their feet. She didn't slam the door when she left. She didn't even tell anyone she was going. One morning, she simply vanished off the grid, off the radar, off their minds. No goodbye post, no job update, no passive-aggressive status hinting at change. Just silence. A new city, a new name on the lease. The old her shed like skin. She erased her online trace with surgical precision, disabling accounts, wiping photos, muting memories. Not out of shame, out of purpose, because what they called foolish, impossible, or too much was exactly what she was about to build quietly, deliberately, and with an obsession that didn't sleep. Their voices still echoed in her head. Not just what they said to her face, but what she wasn't meant to hear. She always bites off more than she can chew. She's got passion, sure, but no follow-through. They laughed when she first spoke about her idea, dismissed it before the words were even done. So she revived it, not in rage, but in code. Late nights spent redrawing the blueprints from memory, refining what they once belittled. Each detail locked behind firewalls and silence. No collaborators, no leaks. This time, no one would steal it. They were busy performing online curated successes, polished captions, filtered grins. They needed the world to know they were thriving. She didn't need anyone to know anything. Her progress wasn't documented. It was lived. No applause, no updates, only endless nights of trial and error, deadlines that didn't allow for doubt. There were moments she could barely keep her eyes open, but she didn't stop. Because while they chased likes, she was building legacy. The past found her anyway, not through contact, but memory. Flashbacks arrived uninvited. The moment they rolled their eyes when she dared to dream bigger. The time they laughed when she stumbled during her first pitch. That meeting where her idea was repeated louder and by someone else and they clapped. She wrote those moments down, not to wallow, but to remember. Because revenge wasn't the goal, excellence was. And one day, when they saw what she'd made, it would speak louder than anything she could ever say. She hadn't planned on being in the same room as them again until she was. A conference her mentor begged her to attend, just as an observer. She agreed reluctantly. She sat in the back, anonymous in her quiet success, sipping burnt coffee. And then she heard it. One of them, laughing, bragging, "You know we had to cut dead weight." She just didn't deliver. The words sliced through the air. They didn't see her. They didn't recognize her. But she saw them. And she smiled, not in bitterness, but in readiness. By then, the pitch was nearly perfect. Weeks of refinement, hours of rehearsing the exact tone, flow, and pause. She secured funding from someone they once tried to impress and failed. Hired a strategist they publicly praised just weeks ago. One of the team leads. A quiet defector from their circle, someone tired of the noise, drawn to real work. Everything they mocked, ignored, and undervalued had become her foundation. And it was nearly time. Her launch plan wasn't accidental. Every detail timed with precision. The date aligned with a high-profile event where they were set to unveil their latest product. Press releases scheduled. Influencers pre-briefed. The same journalists who once skipped her emails now chased her quotes. Her CEO update would drop minutes before their live stream, not to steal attention, but to own the conversation. Her presence would be unavoidable, even in her silence. They didn't see it coming. How could they? They thought she disappeared, in defeat, that she shrank from failure. But she hadn't vanished, she'd been preparing. Their downfall wasn't orchestrated with cruelty. It was calendared. The reckoning wasn't loud or vengeful. It was composed, strategic, and it had already begun. She never sent a message, never tagged them, never gloated, but her work spoke with clarity. And when the world began to notice, really notice, it wasn't her face they remembered. It was the product, the vision, the impact. The checkmate wasn't declared. It was understood. Success had a sound, and it wasn't applause. It was the stunned silence of those who thought you were gone, realizing you'd only stepped away to win. They thought they were clever, thought no one would notice the rushed launch, the cheap imitation, the clumsy repackaging of something once pure and precise. But she noticed. It was hers, after all, twisted, diluted, barely recognizable under the glitter they threw on top. The interface glitched. The features broke under pressure. The reviews were brutal. It flopped in broad daylight, and there was no shadow big enough to hide it under. No PR spin could save it. The idea they once called naive, now copied carelessly, died publicly, and she didn't lift a finger. She watched as confidence turned brittle. The bravado cracked with every failed demo. The visionaries started dodging questions they once answered with swagger. In rooms they used to command, silence grew. People talked now in DMs, in meetings, behind closed doors. Wasn't this copied? Who actually came up with it? The myth of their genius was unraveling. thread by thread, but she said nothing. She simply observed, like a storm patient with its timing. Then came the message, polished, breezy, filled with empty nostalgia. An old friend, or at least someone who wore the label once, slithered back into her inbox. No apology, no acknowledgement of the years they vanished the second her reputation dimmed. Just a friendly request. We should collab. I always believed in your work, as if belief was measured in silence. As if vanishing didn't speak volumes, she typed slowly, choosing words with the same care she used to build code. Her reply was light, pleasant, non-committal. Thanks for reaching out. I'll be in touch soon. A soft answer that said nothing and meant everything. Because the truth wasn't in her words. It was in what was already in motion. And they were about to learn that silence doesn't mean surrender. It means strategy. The first whisper came through a Slack thread, then a forwarded email. Hey, have you seen this? In a group chat. No names, just curiosity. A new CEO, some say. Tech so advanced it couldn't be ignored. She hadn't announced anything, but the silence around her had changed shape. It wasn't absence anymore. It was momentum. She hadn't returned to the spotlight. She'd built her own. They tried to trace it, follow the buzz, connect the dots, but she had left no fingerprints. Every signal was carefully placed to echo but not reveal. Their feeds filled with mentions of a product they didn't understand, from a source they couldn't find. It burned at them quietly. That feeling of something inevitable coming, but from where? She watched it unfold, still quiet, still calculating. They were starting to choke on the smoke, and they didn't even know where the fire was. The post was simple. One striking image, her face calm, determined, and a single line beneath it. No tags, no hashtags, just her name signed at the bottom like a signature on a verdict. The storm it unleashed spread faster than anyone could scroll, faster than they could react. Screens froze as notifications piled up. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. That one post broke through the noise, dismantling their carefully constructed silence with a force that was impossible to ignore. Beneath the image, the caption cut deep, precise as a blade. I was just getting started. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a boast. It was a quiet promise, a reminder to those who'd branded her dead weight that their judgment had been premature, that the woman they dismissed had only been gathering strength, waiting for the right moment to become the headline. And now, the world was watching. The reaction was swift. Bloggers dissected her rise, investors whispered about her potential, and industry insiders debated her strategy. Meanwhile, the very people who had doubted her sat in silence, refreshing her profile page, caught somewhere between disbelief and denial. Their once loud voices were reduced to echoes, swallowed by the growing buzz that now surrounded her. One of them broke first. The one who had once called her expendable reached out with a message dripping in fake warmth. They tried to rewrite history, hoping flattery could erase the past and soften the blow. But she left that message unread and unremembered. There was no space for lies or apologies in her new world. Another scrambled to hitch a ride on her wave of success, reposting an old photo of them together, hoping to bask in reflected glory. But their attempt to chase clout backfired spectacularly. A follower, sharp and unforgiving, exposed their hypocrisy by sharing long-forgotten comments and private messages that revealed their true colors. The repost was swiftly deleted, the damage irreversible. She never needed to post revenge herself. Their own words, once whispered behind closed doors or sent in careless texts, became their curse. Strangers quoted their betrayals back at them, the harsh truth reverberating louder than any retaliation she could have delivered. Their past became a mirror shattering their fragile reputations when they came begging job offers, meeting requests. Desperate private messages, she wielded silence like a weapon. Each request was met with the same cold absence, the quiet refusal echoing louder than any no spoken aloud. They used silence to erase her. She used silence to erase them. The balance was finally restored, not with anger or vindictiveness, but with a calm, unshakable finality. Success, she knew, was the best revenge, and in that silence, she had spoken volumes. The startup took off with a force no one expected. What had once been a quiet idea, dismissed and discarded by those who claimed it wasn't worth their time, now soared. Investors, once skeptical, smiled with renewed confidence as funds poured in. The team, though small, rallied behind a leader forged in betrayal and silent determination. Every milestone reached was a quiet testament to resilience, a company reborn from ashes and sharper than ever. Meanwhile, the world they left behind kept spinning. The tech scene rushed forward, embracing new trends and innovations. Yet among those familiar faces, the ex-friends found themselves fading into the background. Their missteps were glaring, their failures impossible to hide. Doors closed quietly, invitations stopped arriving, and the very community they once moved in had begun to exclude them without fanfare or fuss. When the message finally came, a tentative attempt at reunion, there was no trace of bitterness in the reply. Calm professionalism shaped every word. No gloating, no reminders of past wounds, just an unshakable focus on what mattered now. Growth, progress, and the future they were building one step at a time. The silence in between the lines spoke louder than any accusation ever could. A quiet message, brief but impactful, landed and settled with weight. No hard feelings, just focused on building. It said everything without saying too much. No room for old grudges, only space for the steady, unyielding momentum of success. It was a line designed to close doors softly while leaving windows wide open for new beginnings on her terms. She had been unfriended at her lowest point, erased from conversations, dismissed as irrelevant. Yet here she was, rising to lead a venture that no one could ignore or erase. A success story not born from luck or favor, but from relentless resolve. The CEO they'll never forget, the presence they tried to bury but who grew stronger in their absence, a reminder that the most profound revenge is to rise, unapologetically, beyond the reach of those who once cast you aside.